5:33. Roll call. Doug Gaffney.
Here.
Nita Kushal. Here. Sean King.
Sean King will not be joining us today.
Okay, Gina Lee.
Here.
Doctora.
Aki.
Preeti. Here. Jennifer, I'm here, and Ashante will be joining us. Okay, let's see. Hearing of the public for items on the closed session agenda.
Nothing received with me.
Okay.
And let me make sure there's nobody on our Zoom. Nope.
Okay, I will adjourn us to closed session to consider and or take action upon any of the following public employee performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code 54954.2 at 5:34.
Yes.
At 8:30.
Let's see. Stop the video.
What? So,
All right, we will reconvene open session at 6:22. No action taken during closed session. Let's see, hearing of the public for items not on the agenda.
Nothing received with me. I'd also like to state for the record that Ashante Norton joined during closed session.
All right, hearing of the public for items on the agenda.
Nothing received with me and no members of the public online.
Okay, great. Comments, questions, revisions, additions to tonight's agenda?
There was no action during closed, correct?
No action during closed. All right, may I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I motion to approve. I think she said.
She beat you to it. Okay, thank you. Roll call vote, Doug?
Yes.
Maria?
Yes.
Preeti?
Yes.
Gina?
Yes.
Jennifer, I'm a yes. Nita? Yes. Ashante?
Yes.
Okay.
And that was Nita with the first, yes?
Who?
No.
Nita with the motion, Ashante with the motion, thank you.
Do you want us to slow down?
No, I wasn't.
Like a two-camera version, please. Okay. With that, consent items, questions, comments, anything? Quite a few there, but a lot related to special ed contracts.
Yeah, and these are largely our normal back to school items as we're establishing new contracts with new vendors. This year we have filled quite a few of our special education vacancies with contractors, so that's also part of what you're seeing.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve tonight's consent items? Thank you, Gina. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Nita. Roll call vote. Ashante?
Yes.
Nita? Yes. Jennifer, I'm a yes. Gina?
Yes.
Preeti?
Yes.
Maria?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see, action items. Early College Academy course certifications.
Can I go up to the super cool podium?
Yeah, no,
Make it really official.
So this is our course certification. Most of you have probably seen this before. This is just something that we have to do at least once a year, potentially again as we approach spring if we're offering any different classes. And what this does is it just says which classes we are offering this year. And the important part is that as a board, we have to certify that these courses are of the same academic rigor, quality, and time as regular site-based courses, so in other words, PFA classes. And so basically per ed code, it is required that we certify that our classes are equivalent to those. And this lists every class, how long it is, how many instructional minutes, and how many units that they are. And so hopefully just this once, but we may revisit in December if we have any new classes for this week.
Any questions? Okay, we have the resolution. Do we need a motion, approve, pass, all that, right? Yeah, okay. You threw me off with the more than next time. May I have a motion to approve resolution 08142023.02 Early College Academy course certification? Also, thank you, Dr. Mamarala. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ashante. Roll call vote. Ashante?
Yes.
Nita? Yes. Jennifer, I mean, yes. Gina?
Yes.
Preeti?
Yes.
Maria?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, launching into the 2023-2024 school year, Dr. Wood.
Eva's gonna bring up my slides for me, so while she's doing that, you might be aware that school started. A lot of you said you were really excited to see your kids come back to school as we were coming in tonight. I know we were at our house too. There's only so many video games and things you can do during the summer that you know. So really, this is just an opportunity to talk a little bit about some things that we did over the summer. We actually had a very busy summer here on campus. And then kind of our school-wide themes and big things that we're working on for the year. So next slide. So in terms of summer accomplishments, you can go to the next slide. We have a couple focus areas. So first, summer school. This is, I think, our fourth summer in a row of offering summer school. We did this through our summer boost program in elementary school, where we actually provided instruction to 53 students. And there's some of the images there that you can see in the pictures, but our focus at the elementary level was really on STEAM. So that's science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. and also working on reading and math. And then this summer, all of our teachers at Star Academy are trained in an instructional approach called Project GLAD. And Project GLAD professional development best occurs if you can have teachers demonstrating it with actual real life human children in the classroom. And so we were a Project GLAD Institute this summer during summer school, where our summer school students were engaged in some of the Project GLAD activities, and we had teachers from across the Sacramento region actually come into our classrooms and learn from our kids and from our teachers. And then at the secondary level, we had, summer school for middle and high school. Kim was actually the principal. We had about 60 students in each program. And our focus at high school is really on remediating, any Fs or D minuses or Ds for students who are trying to get A through G eligibility. And during the pandemic, I think we all know our high school kids were really affected. And so it's also been an opportunity to help kids fix things happen during the pandemic. And so because of summer school, this summer we actually were able to have the class of 2023 have a 100% graduation rate. We had a couple of kids make some things up during the summer, so that was a really good opportunity for that. Next slide.
Hey Joe, I have a question.
Yeah.
So the in-person learning, either at Star or here, are these teachers that are already on campus?
There are teachers. Are we talking about during Project GLAD?
Yeah,
So it's a mixture of our teachers.
and summer programs.
Yeah, so let me explain that. I might be looking at the question. So our summer school teachers are our teachers.
Right, okay.
And so they're usually, they teach at Star, Black Rock campus, and then they're teaching during the summer. And then in the case of Project GLAD, there are 2 or 3 lead teachers who work outside of Toma Star School who come and do the professional development. And then the people that are learning from them are a mixture of our teachers as well as teachers from the larger community. So we typically have our new teachers go through the Project GLAD Summer Institute. And then this year, we're just sort of combining it with summer school.
Was that something we were doing throughout the year as well?
Yeah, we also do
Okay.
Project GLAD Institutes
Okay.
during the school year.
Okay, I've heard my kids
One of
talk
the,
about that.
yeah, Michael loved it when he was in elementary school. One of the little challenges with it during the school year is we actually would like our new teachers to hit the ground running with Project GLAD. When we do it during the school year, that really means they can't attend the Institute until like the first or second month of the school year, because we just need to get routines sort of established. We don't want to bring like 20 teachers sitting in the back of the room in the first week of school, plus all of those individuals are starting their school years as well. So we tried it out this year as kind of an opportunity to see if we could get people trained sooner.
Thank you.
So then another area of focus is facilities work here on the Black Rock campus. So we had all sorts of things going on. We got our new gates and fences, which are almost done. I'd say that project's about 98% done. We're down to the painting and some finished stucco. So we have a much more secure campus than we did last school year. Based on your guys' recommendation, we had some beautiful parking lot striping done this summer, which so far, 4th day of school year seems to be helping with traffic flow. We had new flooring installed in our 3 dance rooms here on the Black Rock campus. And then we had some work done on the track, basically re-leveling the track, putting in some new decomposed granite. And we actually had district staff that came out and did that. So we really appreciate the district's partnership in helping make that happen. Next one. We also had, we also had some facilities work going on at PACT. So as you all know, we are building out our PACT phase 2 for the business office to move over there. And so when that happens, the business office, myself, Laura, our TOSAs, our student service director, especially, they'll all have offices over there. So this summer, they had to resurface the concrete. As you all might remember, there was some damage from when the buildings were tilt ups that didn't have a roof on it, that had to be repaired. But this summer it was really focused on interior framing, electrical, and then sheetrock started actually going in this weekend. And so we're looking at construction completion sort of October, November. The HVAC system for the building is on back order. Well, actually, the original wasn't going to be available until March or April. So we found a different vendor, and now they're shooting for November. So, that's what we're on. Everything with construction lately is always a little bit of a hiccup. So we're hoping that we can get it built out by November, and then staff would relocate over winter break. Next one. And then we had professional learning going on campus. I mentioned Project GLAD. We also had another instructional approach that focused on classroom management called Responsive Classroom, where we had teachers as well as classified or hourly staff going through that. We had some math curriculum training going on, and we also had academy department planning. And then Laura and the teaching and learning team really redesigned all of our new employee onboarding this year based on feedback from employees who joined us in prior years. And so we had 2 official days of training plus more. including a school bus tour of all of our campuses, which I think was everyone's favorite part of the 2 days. We had a lot of feedback about that.
So much fun.
And then we had our welcome back all staff days, where we welcomed all of our staff back, built community, and really focused on launching, academy or department work. And then obviously, part of why we start on a Wednesday rather than a Monday is that gives us time to welcome kids to campus. So we had all of our typical student orientation activities with Web and Link crew, also various parent orientation activities and doing community building. And then we have a lot of nights happening in the next couple of weeks, from back to school night to P4A, there's even a LEAP event tonight. With Star Academy Picnic was this last Friday, and then at the end of the month, we have the NAEF, our Natomas Arts and Education Foundation, is sponsoring a Run for the Arts team, or Walk for the Arts if you're weak. I will not be running, I will walk. Someone's chasing me. All right, so next slide. So that's just kind of a little, overview of what we did this summer. We're back at school. We know that COVID is pretty much gone, but still kind of with us. So what are our procedures? Well, I think first that quote, which I pulled from one of the various public health workshops I went to, is kind of important, that state, national, and local officials are transitioning and treating COVID-19 similar to any other respiratory virus. So we're kind of moving away from very COVID-specific protocols to how do we incorporate COVID into our normal respiratory disease protocols. So masking is optional, vaccinations are optional. We have people reporting their illnesses through our general absence reporting processes. That's both students and employees. In terms of isolation requirements, currently it's you return 5 days after testing positive or have demonstrated symptoms. You can return to school when you don't have a fever and symptoms have significantly improved, but a test is not required to return to school. Notifications have largely been phased out. There's some requirements that we have if we have 20 or more cases within, like in a classroom within a 14-day period. But for the most part, notifications have been phased out. We were maintaining a COVID dashboard where we were updating the number of cases every week. As the person who put the data in, I will tell you in the second half of last year, that data was like, I really felt like people weren't reporting. So I don't think it was 100% accurate reflection of what we were seeing just because the reporting, people weren't reporting as much. And so the county, Natomas Unified, and us all phased out our dashboards over the summer. And then we still are doing some notifications if we have staff members who are exposed. It's the Cal OSHA requirement, although I am hearing that that might be shifting. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. We still provide testing. Our staff members can access the testing clinic at the district. And then we have our rapid tests that we have piles of them in the office that we're happy to hand out to anyone. And we do still have to have a COVID safety plan. That's a Cal OSHA regulation. So our COVID safety plan has been updated and posted on our website. So let's talk a little bit about our focus for the year. So we just went through like a lot of nuts and bolts of what we did this summer in COVID. And so I'm going to give you kind of a shortened version of what we did at our all staff day, just to kind of bring the board and the community members at home kind of into the place. So we started off really talking about our why. And what we were reminded is the research of Simon Sinek that in order to really move any work forward, any challenging work forward, we always have to be sort of grounded in our why. Why are we doing this work? What is our mission and vision? And that often people don't buy what you do, but they buy why you do it. So we actually did an activity where teachers and staff kind of went through identifying their own personal why in the sense of why did you get into education? And go to the next slide. Simon talks about the golden circle, which is this idea of your why, your how, and your what being linked together. So we did some of that work kind of as individuals, like, why did I become an educator? What do I hope to accomplish as an educator? And how do I think that happens best? And so then from that, we talked a little bit about how NCS is a really special place. We're a unique school. Anyone that's ever been part of our school community, who's been part of another school community, knows we're an exceptionally special place. And a lot of that goes back to our why as an organization and making sure that, our personal whys are connected to our organizational whys. So next slide here. So we revisited our mission and vision. These are things that you guys actually created as a board when we did strategic planning last year. So just as a reminder, our vision is that we empower the leaders of tomorrow by embracing and enhancing the strengths of all students. And that our mission is that, we are in partnership with students, families, and the community to create a student-first environment in which educators will be architects of learning, ensure a safe and equitable community promoting social emotional wellness, providing high-quality academic choices, fostering growth for all, valuing diverse identities and collective strength in our community, and supporting a caring, innovative, and collaborative sector. Next slide. And within that, you know, at Natomas Charter School, we are a little unique in that we have these 3 pillars that always anchor us. First one being students first, so we're always making decisions with students in mind. Second one, innovation. You know, when I hear innovation, I think the first thing that pops into a lot of people's minds is like, I don't know, there's drones flying around campus, or there's a robot or something, right? Innovation in the sense of that, you know, we're constantly reflecting on what do our kids need and how do I do it differently? And we all know as parents and as community members that the kids that are walking in our classrooms, they are different than the kids that were walking into our classroom before the pandemic. Partially it's related to the pandemic, partially it's other things that are going on in the world. And so that kind of leads to our idea of accountability. That accountability is not something that's done to you, it's something that you have a high degree of personal responsibility for. Next slide. And so what we talked about this year is that at Natomas Charter School, we have a guarantee. Our guarantee is that learning is not an invitation. I've worked at schools before, and I know many of the rest of us that are nodding in here have as well, where the idea is, well, if you don't learn, that's your fault. That's not who we are at Natomas Charter School. If we see a student that's not engaged or they're exhibiting behavior, academic things that don't make sense to us, it is our responsibility to try to figure out what's going on and work with the partnership with the family and the student to figure out how we move that needle forward. And so we talked about how our 3 pillars are a guarantee that we will always continue to connect, challenge, and change to reach our students. We hold ourselves and our students accountable to doing the work. That's part of the guarantee. Next slide. And so a big focus for this year in our work is something called a PDSA cycle. In education, we love our acronyms. But a PDSA cycle is really based in research of effective practices in school environments. And P stands for plan. So really, you know, sort of looking at your data, trying to figure out how you're going to address it. Do, I'm gonna try an innovation. I'm gonna test it out. Study, I'm gonna see, you know, is it producing the results that I want? And then act, what different changes do I need to make moving forward? And so the teaching and learning team and the principals are actually working with our staff this year on really going through a series of PDSA cycles that are focused on deeply looking at our data, better understanding our kids and making adjustments along the way. There's a lot of research in something called collective teacher efficacy, which is really this idea of educators working together, having faith that they can make a difference, but working together and exchanging ideas. And that PDSA cycle is really at the heart of that. And so what we talked a little bit about is as we meet together as a team, we're always going to be sort of asking ourselves these questions. 1, what do we want students to be able to know and do? 2, how will we know if we learn it? You know, what are we going to see, or test scores, whatever. And then what do we respond when students aren't learning? You know, what new interventions are we going to do? And then how do we extend the learning? You know, when we find a situation where, the students really mastered that, how we move forward. Next slide. And we also, you know, reminded everyone as we were talking as a staff, but I think this is in this format, you know, it's important for the community to remember that the school is where we ask families to sign something every year called a 3-way compact. And that is an intentional relationship where the school, the family, and the student are all working together. The image up here is an equilateral triangle. You remember back to geometry days, right? It's like, that's making an assumption that everyone is doing the work equally. But we also recognize that some families or some students, you know, one leg of the triangle might be a little bigger than another, and that's okay too. But you can see sort of in where it says school commitment, family commitment, student commitment, these are some things that we're really focused on this year. You know, on the school level, high quality instruction, providing a supportive environment and engaging in regular communication. Working with students on regular attendance, you know, that's been a big problem, not just at Natomas Charter School, but statewide. You know, kids coming to school every day. Everyone working at the best of our ability and showing kindness and respect. And then on the family side, you know, it's supporting the student, collaborating with the school, but a big support for us is attendance. And, you know, as you guys have been briefed in communications and stuff, as we're hitting the school year this year, we're really saying to families, hey, if your kid's not here, we have a policy that's really clear. By the 4th or 5th day, we're going to be looking at an involuntary disenrollment process because we need your kids to be at school. You know, and if you decide to do something else that is A-okay, there's, you know, 60 to 70 kids on any grade level's waiting list right now. So we're going to offer that spot to someone else, but we need you to be here. Next slide. And so, you know, this year we're really focusing on those 5 traits of an NCS professional. We have new shirts. I see, but make sure you guys got shirts as well. You'll notice on the back of the shirt this year is really the 5 traits of an NCS professional. So integrity, dedication, perseverance, intelligence, and excellence. Next slide. And we talked a little bit as a staff about what each of those things mean. For those of you that might be newer to the board, you may or may not know that this was something actually the Natomas Charter School staff of about 10, 15 years ago developed. They sat down and said, what makes us unique as a group of educators, and identified these 5 traits. And in every interview that we ever do with a prospective employee, we actually ask them, and that's usually the last question, to pick out which one most resonates with them and why. Because we want people thinking about and knowing that this is who we are. And if these are things that you're not 100% bought in with, we probably aren't your right community, and that's okay. Next one. So our theme for the year, though, is about building belonging. And where does that come from? Well, we know that we live in challenging times. We live in a world where student achievement is not where it was at pre-pandemic, and that there's a lot of differences between students who have different access to different resources during the pandemic. We know that we live in a time where there's significant mental health concerns. We see it not just with kids, but with adults as well. And we live in exceptionally polarized times. Turn on the news, you'll see it. And we're already starting to think a little bit about what do we need to do to be prepared for November 2024? Because November 2016 was a little rough in our community. November 2020, we were all on distance learning. So there were rough things happening online, but November 2024, we're all gonna be here together. And that's not just a kid thing or a staff thing, that's a community thing. And how are we gonna navigate that together? So our theme for this year is really focused on building belonging. And if you've done any work in education or in healthcare, you've probably heard about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so this is a framework that's really about what do humans or kids need, in our case, in order to be successful. So we know that at the very basic of this pyramid, you have some physiological needs, right? You need to feel safe, you need to have food, you need to have a roof over your head. And as a school, we do work in this area to make sure that kids have those basic resources. Next click. But we know that learning really occurs more at the top of this pyramid, where after you have the physiological needs meet and the safety needs meet and you build self-esteem, you get to self-actualization, and learning is kind of in that area. Hopefully click the slide one more time. We'll see that what's in the middle of this really links those as love and belonging. And as we look at our students who are struggling academically, one of the things that we were noticing as a pattern is these are also kids that they feel disconnected somehow. We don't always know why, but we know sort of interacting with them, maybe there's an element of angriness. They're like, I don't want to be here, right? Or maybe there's an anger or an element of withdrawal that we don't really quite understand what's going on. And so we're really focusing on this idea of how do we build belonging for the kids, but also for the adults. That's the next one. And there's actually a book that some of us read in the spring about diversity, equity, and inclusion. But one of the statements from that author is that we need to belong in order to achieve. Our self-worth rises when we're grounded in community, and achievement occurs in the context of our relationships. When we're anchored by the sense of belonging, we find in families, friends, and schools, and community, we feel worthy. And so one of our goals this year is really, knowing every kid by name and need, and really trying to understand, especially post-pandemic, like what's happening. The other wrinkle that we have at Natomas Charter School is that we know, looking at our data, that when students come to us in kindergarten, it's actually very, very successful. And so if we look at our English learners, for example, right, or our students that are becoming bicultural, biliterate, those students, if they start with us in elementary school, they usually are redesignated or exit from their EL status by 4th or 5th grade. When students are coming to us, though, in 6th and 9th grade as English learners, that we're not finding as much success. And so one of the things that we're trying to better understand is what's happening in those first 5 or 6 years of another educational environment, and how do we address it? Because even though they might not have received something in elementary school, it's still our responsibility in middle and high school to try to figure out how we address it. And so that's something that we're really thinking a lot about. So next slide. And we actually, as a staff, we read a series of articles around belonging, kind of looking at different themes, whether it was adult belonging or whether it was student belonging. And Laura actually found this graphic, it's a very valuable graphic, but it kind of summarizes what a lot of the research says. What do you need to build belonging? And you can see you need to feel needed, you need to be present. So belonging isn't just something that's done to you, it's something that you have to actively engage in as well, right? But you have to be invited, you have to feel welcome, you have to be known and accepted. But you also have to be involved, you can't sit on the sidelines and expect to feel a sense of belonging. You have to feel supported, you have to feel heard, you have to feel befriended. So next slide. The next slide just kind of talks a little bit about each of these things, which we talked a little bit about as a staff. And we will continue it this year. So as we exit, what we talked about as a staff is like, well, what does this really mean? Like, what are we doing when we're building belonging this year? So the first is really designing for inclusion, like looking at our curriculum, looking at our instructional approaches. Are they really welcoming and bringing everyone in? And next slide. And so a frame for curriculum that we're thinking a lot about is the idea of windows and mirrors. So where does the curriculum provide windows? That is opportunities to learn about people who might have a different lived experience than you do. But also, where does the curriculum have mirrors? Opportunities to see yourself reflected in the curriculum. Because when you see yourself reflected in the curriculum, that's one of those opportunities to feel a sense of worthiness because your experience is valued or your family's experience is valued. Next slide. So along with designing for inclusion, we also talk about the importance of engaging in dialogue. And next slide. There's actually a book, it's called Bridge the Gap, and it's written by two authors that are based here in Sacramento, and they actually have one of the #1 TED Talks out on the TED network right now. But they have this quote, which is very applicable to education as well. They said, the American workplace is probably the last epicenter where we practice daily democracy. Daily democracy, from their definition, is this idea that when you go to work or when you go to school, you have to engage with people who are different than you. You might not have that experience at your church or another community group or even on social media or heck, even the news, right? You turn on MSNBC or Fox News or Newsmax and you'll see the same story told 3 different ways to 3 different audiences, but audiences that are not necessarily very diverse. But the American workplace or the school is one of the places where you do have to come every day and you have to interact with people that are different than you. And so what they talk a little bit about is that, from the conversation skills are what we really do. We have to be able to dialogue with each other and to, disagree without being disagreeable. And over the last couple of years, we've noticed that this is something students struggle with, but we've also noticed this is increasingly something adults are struggling with. I know I had a situation last year where I had one adult claim that another adult was discriminating against them. And as we investigated it, what we found out is it was just that they thought differently. And, helping the world understand that that's part of like living in the United States, right? And like, how do we dialogue? And so we're looking at, the teachers are really looking at different ways that they're engaging kids in conversation and using some talk and dialogue structures. Next page. So the last area we talked about is the importance of cultivating relationships. And one of the articles that we read as we were looking at belonging was about the importance of greeting students at the door. And I've actually noticed over the last couple of days that more and more teachers are doing this. So I know I heard from at least one sophomore that was wondering why every teacher was doing it. So, but it's been done with some intentionality because it sets a positive tone for the day. It also gives teachers an opportunity to check in with kids on the way in the door and make sure that they feel seen and valued and heard. But it doesn't just benefit the students, it benefits the staff as well. I think I've shared this with the board, but I haven't shared it with our staff that, I go out and I do pick up and drop off almost every single day. And I always get asked, like, why are you out here? You're the executive director. Don't you have better things to do? No, actually, no. I go out there every single day because it's important for me to see the kids for my own mental well-being, but it's important for them to be seen and their families to be seen. And it is actually one of my favorite parts of the day. So it's my version of greeting people at the door. Next one. So what are our focus areas? So I mentioned that, we're really focused on building belonging this year, making sure all the kids feel seen and heard. Another area that we will definitely be focusing on all year is staffing. I'm actually surprised it's not being talked more in the news. Maybe it's still coming, but there's an extreme educator shortage going on right now. I hope every parent understands that if your child has a credentialed teacher, you're a pretty lucky person right now. Because there are schools where there are dozens of teachers that are not fully qualified or they have substitutes that are coming in. We're seeing more and more, there was one statistic I saw that there's 3,000 fewer credentialed teachers in California this year than there was 12 months ago. Just with people retiring or people, leaving the state. And there are some parts of the state that are experiencing declining enrollment. Sacramento, we're experiencing sort of flat enrollment, but some of the outer suburbs, so like Placer County, El Dorado County, they're actually experiencing increasing enrollment. So, there's a real teacher shortage, and we're hearing from the credentialing programs that there's no applicants or there's very few applicants coming into the program. So, we're continuing to build partnerships for recruiting, but also looking at what do we need to do for retention. And, salary and benefits will be something we'll be talking about as a board. Providing high quality instruction, digging deep into the curriculum, focusing on best practices. I mentioned that PDSA cycle. Another big focus area for us is really building strong special education procedures. Amy, coming in as a special ed director, has done a lot of work already over the summer, really deeply analyzing our processes and procedures, and is working with a couple of different outside consultants to really standardize our universal approaches and building out our full continuum of services, which that doesn't, our continuum services isn't just the services we're providing on campus, but for students who have really significant needs, what are those partnerships that we have with other agencies? Continuing to address behavioral and mental health needs. I've asked Petra to work with the principals, especially on this campus, to really, how do we have a comprehensive positive behavior intervention supports with PBIS structures on campus, and really re-examining our discipline practices. Do they make sense? Are they sustainable? And how do we do it in a cohesive way? But also, continuing to address student health, mental health needs. As parents and board members, you guys are familiar with Care Solace. You've probably seen the emails, the mental health referral process. We actually still have that as part of our relationship with the Sacramento County Office of Education through the SELPA. And as a SELPA, we've actually invested in that for 2 more years as a resource to really connect families with outside mental health resources. And then an exciting area is facilities. We're working on our Black Rock Master Plan, which will allow us to eventually replace the business office with a 2-story classroom building and do some other remodeling here on campus, completing PACT Phase 2, and then continue to work on our community relationships. We do have a new superintendent here in the district. I had the opportunity to meet her a couple weeks ago, and I think we're gonna have a great working relationship. We also have an NUSD board opening going on, which that'll impact us, and so we'll be working on community relationships there. We learned today that there's a new resource, NUSD Connect, which is a free internet service for families in the district. And through our relationships with the district has extended that to the charter school students as well, including ours here. And then we're also working on joining the NUSD School Resource Officer program. So NUSD has a contract with Sacramento Police Department to have a group of SROs that are dedicated to the schools here in Natomas. And they have that contract and they work with the SROs so that we can have a group of law enforcement professionals that understand what it's like to work in a K-12 school environment, understand, de-escalation strategies if a student's super escalated, which is good because, not saying anything bad about the rest of the police department, but, when you have to call the non-emergency number of 911, it's whoever is available, which may or may not be a person that has experience working with kids or working with student discipline and that sort of thing. So we will have a contract that will allow us to have access to an NUSD SRO as well. All right, so with that, what do I got left? Oh, so this is how we close out our staff day. That even in the most challenging times, we have a choice. And we talked a little bit about, as a 46-year-old adult, I'm suddenly realizing, oh, wow, I'm the person in charge now, right? I still think I'm 19 sometimes in my head. And I'm like, wait, I'm responsible for fixing all this stuff now. And so what we talked a little bit about is that as educators, we all have an opportunity to help things be better. What's our part now? So that is our launch for the year.
All right, thank you, Joe. Comments, questions? Anything?
Very positive. Good stuff.
Fun things we'll talk about at work.
Concerning mental health, what do you have on campus specifically? If there's any kind of de-escalation needs, mental health crisis situations, what do you have live on campus for leaders?
So we have on this particular campus, we have 2 social emotional counselors and 2 academic counselors. And then on the Star Academy campus, we have another social emotional counselor, and we have 1 SPAC. So we have on campus mental health resources. Also this year, all of our administrators were trained in QPR, which is a suicide risk strategy process. What else am I?
We also have a school psychologist.
Thank you. And you also, we have 3 school psychologists actually that work with us. So we have quite a bit of mental health resources given our student population. I will say, generally, so there's in education lingo, we call it tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. But the idea is tier 1 is things that we provide to all students, tier 2, things we provide to some students, tier 3, things we provide to very few students. And so on the mental health side, tier 1 is really looking at pro-social, SEL or mental health curriculum being in all advisory classrooms. And so whether it's Caroline Hines over at Star Academy or Danielle Del Castro Viscus and Keanu Williams on this campus, I almost say Keanu Reeves, I was like, they're really working with the teachers on how are we implementing that in our advisory or, class meeting structure. And then Danielle and Keanu and Caroline also run some small groups, so that's kind of more the tier 2. And then we do some tier 3 emergency, so students showing, self-harm concerns, or maybe there's a divorce or something that's concerning. They'll do a little bit of tier 3, but our goal with tier 3 is really to help the family access community resources. So if we have a situation where a student needs ongoing therapy, the idea would be to get that out into the community. But I'm sure if you see on the news, maybe you've experienced as parents, like the mental health systems in the community are really impacted right now. And so, we're kind of finding that it really depends a little bit on like what insurance you have in terms of how well you can access a mental health provider. So that's where our counseling team really tries to work with the parents on helping them find resources. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No.
Okay.
Great job. I thought you were gonna read, so I was ready.
It's good, we also have a counselor at ECA as well.
And so that Carousel is like a really good resource for the families to access as an additional need that's doesn't matter as far as your insurance.
Yeah, so Carousel is, the way they market themselves is a concierge for mental health services. So basically, we can do a referral or a parent can start their own referral, and they basically will go into the system and say, this is what I'm looking for in terms of a mental health provider, and this is what I have in terms of insurance. And then Carousel will actually find them someone and actually go through the whole connection process and make sure that they get served. And what is kind of nice on the back end is we can actually get some data from that. And so we can see, who's gone through the system, whether or not they were able to get matched with someone, and whether or not that's been successful. EAP, yeah, we also have an employee assistance program, EAP. So for our employees, they can access mental health resources through our EAP program.
So when you say like you renewed that relationship with them, is that like is that a fund that we're paying into to maintain a relationship?
Sort of. So the Carousel contract is done by the Sacramento County SELPA, of which we are a member of. The SELPA, so the way the SELPA works is the superintendents who sit on the SELPA make the expenditure decision. So I'm one of the voting members on that SELPA. And so what we decided to do was use our COVID funds that we had left at the SELPA to pay for a total of 3 years of Carousel. So we extended our contract by 2 more years. And then all of the members of the SELPA that were finding a lot of value in it. So there's already a discussion about like, well, are there other SELPA mental health funds that we could use to continue to extend this contract? But we will definitely have it this school year and next school year. So those are the 2 more years that we added it for. Awesome. Thanks for those questions. All right, enrollment. Speaking of financial resources, as a board, that our budget is largely driven by enrollment. So what Ziva has in front of you tonight was our projected enrollment as of the 1st of August. If you go down to the very, very bottom, Ziva, you can see that we budgeted 1857, but at least as of the 1st of August, we were at 1910. I just looked at it a couple hours ago, we're at 1898. But remember, this is always the time of the year where things are the most dynamic, right? Because we have, like right now, we're in the process of families, if they haven't shown up to school, we're disenrolling the kids and then offering to other people on the wait list. So there's a lot of dynamicness that happens at this moment. At the moment, though, if we look at I'll call them like over enrollment numbers, meaning like budgeted versus projected, you'll see the biggest differences are actually at the bottom at ECA. So ECA was originally looking at 110 students. As of August 1st, they're 129. Do you know what you are off the top of your head for today?
Right about there.
Yeah, 129, yeah. So that's good. So, if ECA is able to maintain higher enrollment, also on here, PACT is a little bit higher than projected. So PACT was planning for 136, but they were at 163 as of August 1st. That has already gone down a little bit. I think Alicia told me they were around 150 as of today. So we'll go through this period of time. The goal is to have all of our seats filled by that first Wednesday in October. That's Census Day. So that's when budgets are sort of established. For our 3 site-based programs, we're not gonna have a problem. We have very healthy waiting lists. We received just over 2,000 applications as of last week for this current school year that we've entered for roughly 400 to 500 spots. So any given grade level at the site-based programs, we pretty much have 60 to 70 students on the wait list, maybe with the exception of like 11th and 12th grade. But those are full grades. And then both PACT and ECA, I mean, yeah, we're having people leave, but we're also having a healthy number of people show up at the same time. So the goal is to continue that.
All right. Board policies.
So tonight, we do a first reading of all these board policies. So these board policies, just as a reminder for the board, the way we do our policies is we always do a first read when we're looking at a policy that has text-based changes to it. And then next month, it'll show up as a consent item for you to approve. So tonight, there are these 5 policies before the board. Each of these policies have a reference to the student services director in them. And so the way these policies were originally suggested as drafting, it was student services director and the person's name. We've since sort of had some conversations with our legal counsel, and just to standardize things moving forward, all these are just going to say student services without an individual's name. And so it'll just say student services director, which currently is patron.
All right.
Yeah?
I had a question about the homeless.
Mhm.
The definition of homelessness. I remember on page 64, I read that you wouldn't consider homeless kids who live in a mobile park. Something to that effect. So I just wondered, is there certain, do these definitions come from the state? And let's say if a family, let's say a family's homeless, but they stay in a mobile park or work, with another family temporarily, that's not considered homeless?
If they stay with another family and if it's called doubled up,
Okay.
they would be considered homeless.
Okay.
So your first part of your question, yes, this language is basically state-driven language where there's very specific definitions of when an individual is declared homeless.
Okay.
The reason why the mobile park is a student in the state of California, if they live in like a trailer park, they're not considered homeless because that is a permanent housing.
Because it's just them and their family.
It's them and their
It's
family.
not with another family.
Versus like living in a car, that would be
Right,
considered
right,
homeless
right.
because a car is not intended to be a type of
Right.
long-term housing. California does have this, it's just referred to as doubled up, but the idea of like, if, let's say, we moved in with my parents for economic reasons that were, I lost my job or something like that, that is considered a definition of homeless. It is nuanced though. If, let's say, my brother and I decided to buy a house together and we did it not because of like economic hardship, but just because it was how we chose to live together, that's not in itself declared homeless. So Petra as our homeless liaison often will work with families, and we have some forms that people will fill out, but then we'll call and ask them follow-up questions because it is important for us to identify who is potentially homeless as defined here in education code. One, it is related to our funding that we receive as a school, but it also helps us access resources for those families.
And the other question I had was, it mentioned also that if the students are part of NCS, that we would provide transportation. Could you elaborate?
So what we've done in those situations is we actually have like transportation vouchers that they can use.
Oh, I see.
So student service director, homeless youth liaison, will work with the family to kind of figure out what they need. Is it a gas card because they do have transportation and that's the only way they can get to and from school? Is it a bus pass because they live on the, near the RT route? And so it's a little bit, we don't have a school bus that's necessarily
Right,
big enough for
exactly.
kids.
Right.
But trying to kind of come up with other creative ways that we can help the students get to school.
All right. That's it. Executive director comments.
Welcome back. It's gonna be a great school year. I feel like I've done a lot of talking already, so. But welcome back. If you have any big events, all the various back to school nights are coming up, so definitely stay tuned for those. And I know at all the various back to school nights, we'll be talking about upcoming performances, sporting events, other fun things that are happening as well.
Awesome. Board of director comments. You got nothing. Okay.
Yeah, we're happy to be back.
We are. Future board agenda items.
I have stuff.
You
I'll
wanna
put on
start
the
talking
table.
about Form 7 yet?
Oh,
Yeah,
we will be, talking about board member transitions. So I know we have one person who I'm not gonna look at right now that is gonna be retiring. Another person whose child changed academies, and so we will be advertising for a non-classroom based parent representative later this week. We'll start the advertising process.
I'm just gonna say, I am gonna work with Sarah Winter, the arts coordinator and outreach coordinator, to put together a list of when all performances are and all those things for all the boards, so that you can start kind of having you guys at least be aware of that and also sign up to the big events as well.
That sounds great.
Would you all prefer that information to go in that spreadsheet that you're normally used to looking at and adding your names there, or do you want it to be handled a different way? Does the spreadsheet work for y'all?
And it's always odd when you use it from your phone.
Yeah, I always
struggle with it.
Yeah, separately.
Remember, we're not as technologically advanced as the kids.
I think some of the highlighted stuff doesn't show up properly on the phone, and I'm guessing most of us just look at stuff on our phone.
Yeah. Okay, I'll draft something else up and see if you guys can see it well, and then I'll work with Gareth and Sarah to get it in however you guys want.
I think the spreadsheet works well for the end of the year stuff, because there's so
Yeah.
much.
Joe, I have a question about, when do we get to do like the 2-year calendar thing? Is that
So that'll be in November.
in November?
That's typically when we do it. So what we will be bringing to you in November is a 24-25 calendar as well as a 25-26 calendar. So we already have approved, so remember we went to a process of approving a 2-year calendar. So right now we have a 23-24 calendar and a 24-25 calendar. This next process will be sort of a reapproval of the 24-25, and if we have to make any adjustments, we can. And then the 25-26 calendar, which will be a completely new calendar.
All right. If nothing else, I will adjourn us at 7:09.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Can I make an announcement as well?
Sorry.
No, it's okay, I waited till you're done. Doesn't matter. So Felicia Howard, one of our HR staff and I went to the Teacher Recruitment Summit at CDE today. And we got asked to be interviewed on CBS 13 and we did it together. Now they're best for wanted to do it alone. And so I heard that they used part of our spot, so
Yay,
on the news.
congratulations.